My name is Daniel, and please enjoy a little ghostly history from Romania. You may be waiting for me to say Transylvania. Nope, it's around a region called Wallachia, and a man who once ruled it. Vlad Dracula Tepes, son of the dragon and the subject of today's video. Prince of Wallachia in the 13th century, a small region of Romania. His reign short-lived, but his reputation is immortal. Infamy remembered 600 years after his supposed death, all thanks to a former actor's assistant. Bram Stoker wrote Dracula in 1897 after spending time with a Hungarian traveler named Vambari Armin. He inspired Bram, some calling Armin the real-life Van Helsing. They both love history and folklore, leading to Bram writing a 500-page novel called Dracula. When later asked about Vlad, Bram publicly claimed he didn't know anything of the historic figure or ever seen the castles of Bran or Ponari. Remains a mystery, but for me the connections are way too strong, such as Vlad's nickname being Dracula, a Slavonic genitive for son of the dragon. His father referred to Dracul, or dragon. Vlad's Bran castle is in Transylvania, the fictional home of Bram's Dracula. And the one I surprisingly just realized when putting this article together, stakes. In the book, a wooden stake is chosen weapon of a vampire hunter. If plunged into the chest, the vampire may turn to dust, or a bloodbath will ensue and the monster is dead. Vlad was known as the Impaler, known well for his horrible method of execution using large stakes. Now, the following is a detailed description of impalement as a form of execution. Believe me, I take no pleasure in this, but history is history. The man is laid out before a large wooden stake, usually longer than the man is tall. A sharpened end placed against his anus as his legs are tied to waiting horses. Sent galloping off, the force pulls him into the stake, lifted and dragged and planted into a hole, the man balancing on top. And then slow death begins as gravity takes hold, his body slowly sliding down the post towards the ground. Minutes, hours, and most likely days will pass, agonizing pain until the release of death, the stake eventually coming out through the man's mouth. It's rumored Vlad would watch this, sometimes at a table set up on a battlefield, treating death like a dinner show, paired with a nice meal. But was this depiction real? They'll claim his violent reputation was created to stop enemies from attacking him. Maybe looking into his history tells us more. Vlad Tepes was the grandson of Mircea of Wallachia, considered to be the bravest of the Christian princes. War turned Vlad's home into a battleground filled with violence, and Vlad's father, also Vlad, was Mircea's illegitimate son. Didn't stop him from greatness though, when Vlad the father became a leader among men, soon noticed by a group called the Order of the Dragon. The order created to unite countries against a much larger Ottoman Empire. The order gave Vlad the Father a nickname, calling him Dracul, meaning dragon, and then in 1431 they made him king of Wallachia. Time passes, violence avoided, as the then Ottoman Sultan wants a world of trust and peace. Out of respect, Vlad the Father gave over his two sons as captives, including Vlad the Son. Now Vlad the Son was very mistreated, whipped and beaten, insulted, called stubborn and rude, and without any kindness or respect, his hatred grew for the Ottoman soldiers, centering on the man who led them. This once brutal captor would eventually become Sultan. The hatred for his captors didn't compare to the anger for his own father, blaming his father for his captivity and betraying the order. A member since the age of 5, Vlad the son knew his father's friendship with the enemy was against the rules. Of course, this is where Dracula comes from, the order naming Vlad after his father, but adding son, so son of the dragon. Vlad loved the order, calling them his people. They respected him and saw his potential as a leader. And even though Vlad the son was unknowable, feelings completely hidden from his captures without showing any emotion, the Ottoman soldiers trusted Vlad. And everything changed when Vlad the father was assassinated in 1447, while standing as a puppet leader. The Sultan made Vlad the son his new puppet, but Vlad wasn't ready. Wallachia invaded and Vlad didn't fight. He escaped, fleeing to his influential uncle for protection and remaining in exile for years. He'd eventually return for the throne, but something had changed. Gone was the scared puppet leader. This began the most memorable reign in Romanian history. From a reputation of violence and cruelty, a legend reaching through time into the 1800s to be used by an author named Stoker. Vlad was a hero to the people of Romania. To all others, he was considered a monster. A brutal and effective leader, completely removing crime from any streets and protecting his people from the hated Ottoman army. Ruling in a cold and brutal way, punishment was swift, violent, and cruel. A reputation spread throughout and beyond Romania. Talk about his methods and cause disgust. Like the story when Vlad went up against a rival prince, saying the rival was chased down by soldiers, forced to take shelter in a small village. They found him, and Vlad gave no mercy. The village was charged with sheltering an enemy. Thousands were impaled. As for the rival, he was dragged to an open grave, forced down and made to speak a eulogy to himself before being killed and pushed into the grave. This could have been the start of the propaganda, though. My thought? It's a mix of truth and legend. Maybe partly the exaggerations of people, partly the exaggerations of Vlad himself. In the 1460s, Vlad is being challenged by an Ottoman invasion. Since his enemy is much larger, he orchestrated guerrilla-style small attacks. Didn't work as the Sultan still took over Wallachia. And from a large battle, beautifully recreated in Francis Ford Coppola's movie Dracula, the beginning scene leading to Vlad's wife throwing herself into the river below Parnari Castle. It was true. And Vlad left alive and replaced by his younger brother Radu. This is the same brother who stood captive with Vlad as a child in the Ottoman camp. Radu was also mistreated, put down and beaten, but came out different. He respected the Sultan. And after the battle, Vlad was held captive for 13 years. How he was released is debated by historians to this very day. But a trusted source says Vlad became a Catholic, and the Vatican opposed the Muslim Ottoman Empire and were willing to help free a Catholic Vlad. In 1475, he got back his throne. Vlad became a leader without an army, though. Threats slowly seeping in from all around him, Vlad escaped. Wait for it, to Transylvania. He made another attack on Wallachia in 1476, but not against his brother Radu, as Radu was dead. Vlad succeeded, taking the throne one final time, and he felt safe in Wallachia, maybe too safe. Sent his soldiers back to Transylvania just as the Ottomans marched in. Vlad quickly gathered a small army and personally marched out to greet them, but he didn't return. Now Vlad's death remains a complete mystery. Some say that he was killed in the battle after being betrayed by his own army, that they found his body decapitated and saved the head. It was preserved in honey to slow decay and sent to the Sultan to be publicly displayed, showing that the tyrant was dead. And Vlad's headless body then buried in Snagov Monastery near Bucharest. But was it really? In the 1930s, excavators opened his grave at Snagov to reveal two graves, one empty and the other containing a headless corpse, giving steam to the rumor that the empty grave was Vlad's. If true, Maybe his body was moved to avoid desecration, or the headless body beside his supposed grave was actually Vlad. Or maybe this is exactly what a vampire wants you to think. But first, you might be wondering where all the dark violence Vlad's reputation was based upon is. Far be it from me to not satiate your bloodlust. 15th century Romania was harsh and violent. Vlad is a respected historical figure. Many talk of his atrocities as pure legend or a normal reaction during old-time war. Recounting his stories as an outsider from a calm and free country would add to the feeling of disgust. Impaling was Vlad's favorite execution style, for many reasons lost to history, but the details remain. Much thought and reflection went into each mass impalement. Victims set up in rows, higher-ranking officials were killed closer to the front to dishearten countrymen who watched their most respected leaders die violently. Staked and left at town gates for invading armies, as they marched over a hill to see a wall of impaled bodies, fear for all who dare enter Vlad's domain. This punishment was done on enemies, but also local criminals, causing crime to virtually disappear from Wallachia. It was said a citizen could leave gold in the town square, return the next day, and find it untouched. Many leaders have used this statement over the generations, including the fictional Bill the Butcher in the movie Gangs of New York. And then there's Vlad's party. Ponari Castle was built in the 1200s, and 200 years later it was in ruins, and Vlad saw its strategic potential. But how to get it rebuilt on the cheap? After reaching the throne for the second time in 1456, Vlad held a party for the noblemen of Wallachia. Invited guests were hesitant though. They betrayed Vlad's father in the past and his brother to the Sultan and feared revenge. But pressure and pride brought them out, thinking that Vlad knew the cost of politics, thinking he would just want their money and support, and the party was successful. Noblemen and their families calm, about to leave when Vlad's soldiers marched in. He commanded all the old and feeble guests to be taken away and impaled. Able-bodied guests were put in chains, led out and marched to the ruins of Ponari Castle. And once the ruling elite of Wallachia, they became Vlad's slaves. It took years to recreate the old castle befitting his high standards. The slaves were starved and worked to death. Well, I think that's it. Thanks for listening. Oh wait, I forgot one thing. The debate rages on. Is Vlad a real-life vampire? The believers yell, "Look at his cruelty! His body disappeared!" Non-believers will retort, "It's not possible. Vampires are fake." If not for Bram Stoker, we wouldn't be talking about it at all. If asked about this before dying in 1912, Stoker most likely would have been a non-believer. He was scientific, loved the occult, but chose logic every time. And in the end, it must be fiction. It's not possible to sustain life without a beating heart, to live off another's blood, be immortal, and not die. It has to be fiction, right? We've reached the end. This has been a ghostly history of Vlad Dracula Tepes. Do you believe in vampires? Think it adds to or takes away from this interesting man's history? Tell us in the comments below. Ghosts make history just that much better. Thanks for watching.